That was incredible, absolutely amazing stuff. Hello, welcome back to another video. You've joined me stood in the middle of the River Irk. I'm in Chadderton Park, just to the north of Manchester, Chaddy Park if you know it, and it's quite idyllic here in the River Irk. But the River Irk runs onwards now through Middleton, where it's joined by the Winsbrook and the Whitbrook, and it goes through Blakely, Collyhurst, and as it gets towards Manchester it plunges into a hellhole just underneath Victoria Station. And if you were to try and follow it, that's its last blow to you. It doesn't let you follow it all the way to the River Irwell. So from this wonderful, lovely, shallow, idyllic spot, let's go into Manchester and we'll see what its final last laugh is. So you can see that is the River Irk's last laugh to any would-be explorers that want to follow it to its conclusion at the River Irwell. The hardcore urban explorers call that culvert Optimus Prime. Notoriously difficult to get into. A few people have been in there, but it is very difficult and it's quite foreboding and quite scary to look at as well. Let me just show you the other side and I'll show you what else makes it really difficult to get access into it. So you can see you either drop in down the weir into cold dark water, or you're sailing by boat from the River Irwell, and that's what makes that culvert so difficult and inaccessible. There is another way though. Okay, so let me just show you where our culvert Optimus Prime runs from. Here's a map of Manchester city centre. Top right there you've got a peep of the Irk there. I'll draw a blue line for you, and basically this is where it runs underneath Manchester Victoria, along there, and just joins the River Irwell at that point there. You can hear the river. I'm going to go this way, down there. I'll just point to the light. I'm guessing there's another drop now down to the River Irk, so let's just go and see where this goes. Down now into the River Irk, and there's water at the bottom of this ladder. The river's a lot more swollen than what I expected it to be. We've had quite a lot of rain recently, so I think normally you would be able to water down the sides. We're going to go that way first towards the River Irwell, see how far we can get. But like I say, the river's not in flood, but it's quite swollen more than it would normally be. So I don't know how far we can go that way, but we'll see if we can see the River Irwell. We'll go that way and then we'll turn round and we'll come back up this way, and I'll show you the weir at the other side, which is about 6-7 foot, which also makes it so difficult to get down here.
Here's a still picture of the archway I'm walking towards. Now the River Irk under Manchester Victoria Station was culverted in sections. So that section there that you're looking at, that archway, apparently dates back to 1845, which kind of makes sense because Manchester Victoria Station in its first form opened in 1844. So I think at one point, you see the stonework on top there, I think you would have walked over there and been able to look down into the then open River Irk. So where I've took the photograph from would have been open, and you would have been able to stood on top of that parapet and look down into the Irk. The boat has been left there by some maintenance people that have been inspecting the brickwork and the structure down here.
So this is incredible. I've always wanted to come down here. Amazing stuff. So at the other end down here, the way we're walking, the light's pretty poor because I've not got a proper decent torch with me, but the other end down here is where the River Irk joins the River Irwell in Manchester. Now I'll show you, probably cutting now, a shot of where we're about to walk to, just to show you. I've got some wellies on that are about 10 sizes too big, so I'll keep falling all over the joint. Flies.
And of course we had to walk through the million insect storm that was playing havoc with my focusing system on my camera. Anyway, feature coming up on the left hand side where the torch is there, some kind of stone wall, looks like some sort of maybe a landing stage for a boat or something, I don't know, I'm only guessing. But another interesting feature that I can't really explain.
This one. So just across the boat, over the arch.
Now obviously up ahead is the River Irwell, but you're looking again at a possible stone bridge. Let me show you this 1825 map of Manchester. See to the left hand side there, it says Hunt's Bank. I'm wondering if we're looking at the remainder of Hunt's Bank Bridge. We're certainly in the right place, just as the River Irk joins the River Irwell. So I'm wondering, maybe that is the remains of Hunt's Bank Bridge. But again, I speculate because I can't definitely tell you, but it's just a point of interest for you. Here's the best close-up of the bridge I can get. And I would have liked to have gone out underneath there towards the River Irwell, but it just now gets really deep and dangerous.
Proper sweat on, so it's a lot deeper than what I thought down here. I thought either side there would be like a bit of a pavement or something, but the water goes right to the edges of the tunnel. Out there obviously is going out to the River Irwell. Been a bit dodgy coming down because that's to sort of cling to the wall and watch the footing, because it's really, I honestly thought it would be like a pavement in here. either side of it, but I think the river's quite swollen at the moment, so probably not the best of times to come because it's been raining quite a bit. But we're going to go up to the top end now, and if you know Manchester, we're going to look at the weir that drops into this culvert. Typical. This was all a bit unplanned, so I've not got my great brilliant light with me. But you get the idea of what it's like down here. Very dark and very dingy and full of black muddy water. A couple of little features on the side walls. I've read about them loading boats down here, and some of the like little coal chutes that fed into the Irk culvert, and they loaded coal onto boats. I'm not exactly sure what they are, but I should have showed it you, or cut one in and show it you. See, there was little chutes that's like metal, that, and that goes up somewhere up there, doesn't it? Oh, just going to some really deep water now. Yeah, I hope it doesn't come over the top of the wellies. You just don't know what you're walking on. I'm trying to do a piece to camera while I walk through the bloody River Irk. Beautiful on the walls. Shit, spiders! Beautiful on the wall. Beautiful on the walls, lots of stone, and obviously massive spiders, which I nearly walked into and put my hand in. I'm just hoping this water don't come over the top of me flipping wellies.
And spiders aren't the only thing that's living down here. When you actually look into the water, it is actually quite clear and quite clean, believe it or not. And that little line there is a little fish that's just stood still for the moment. So there are fish down there, albeit small ones.
So as we're walking through the culvert, there's quite a few of these little round holes that go on for quite a bit. Don't know what they are. All I can think of is it's some sort of drainage for the station or something like that, maybe, that runs down here out into the Irk. You could actually crawl in there and go up and see where it goes. I imagine it'd be a good adventure, but I imagine it will probably come up at a manhole or something like that. But there's one across the other way as well. I'll show you that one. But there's all sorts of stuff that feeds into here that obviously has a history to it, and I don't know enough about the place down here, but that is quite fascinating, to be honest with you. Over there. Of course, the place is full of flies as well, literally eating flies as we walk. You know when you wish you should have brought your waders. It's alright, yeah. You know what that is?
Okay, so as we peer through the darkness now, we finally see one of the best features in here, and it's the bridge. Now there's an urban myth about that bridge, that it's very, very old. That it's a cattle bridge from the 1600s. I'm not quite sure. But incidentally, as we get up to it, close up, there's a metal doorway just in the side, and certain explorers have been underneath Victoria Station and opened that door you see there, that metal door, and peered down into the river, into the darkness, and it looks absolutely terrifying from up there. And here we are down here. Anyway, the bridge is supposed to be a cattle bridge from the 1600s. Here's my thoughts on the bridge.
So the bridge, let's talk about the bridge. It's supposed to be a medieval cattle bridge that is underneath there. First of all, let me show you some maps and show you the location that it's in.
Okay, here we go. Here's a map from 1772. Just if you take a look at it, familiarise yourself with the River Irk, going to meet the River Irwell on the left there. Where the red arrow is, there's a crossing point. Now it's possibly all fields at this point, so you may well have needed a cattle bridge to get your cattle across the Irk at that point over to the fields on the other side. Let's jump forward in time a little bit. Okay, here's the 1793 map. We've jumped forward 21 years. As we zoom in, you'll see the crossing roughly in the same place. It says Mill Brow, and it goes over the River Irk to fields, as you would expect at this point. Now, as we pan upwards on the map, just as a matter of interest, you'll see it says New Workhouse. Now, that workhouse was built in 1792 and it opened to the inmates on the 14th of February 1793. It stands basically, or it stood, where the Manchester Evening News Arena car park now is. Okay, so let's jump forward 32 years. This map is 1825. You'll see the red arrow points to the crossing point at Mill Brow, roughly where it's always been. The blue arrow is pointing to the workhouse, and now rather conveniently situated near the workhouse is a burial ground. That is Walkers Croft burial ground. The first interment there was in 1815. That would later prove to be a problem to the Victoria station that is yet to be built on that site or near there. Okay, so we've jumped forward now another 23 years. This is 1848. Victoria Station has now been built. It's the heavy grey lines at the top of the map. As we slowly zoom in, when the blue arrow appears, you'll see it says footbridge and wooden in brackets underneath it. Walkers Croft Cemetery is still there, and as we zoom in further, you'll see it says School Mills. Now remember School Mills. Now Victoria Station at the top there is not in the orientation you would expect it to be when you study these maps. Allow me to explain. This is Todd Street. It comes down off Corporation Street in Manchester, and you would have walked down here towards Victoria Station. The big fascia of Victoria Station that you see on the right didn't exist. So what you used to do was walk down Todd Street down here, and we're now walking towards the River Irk and Mill Brow and the bridge, and this is the way people used to have to walk to the station. So they'd walk down this way. Remember, the massive building on the right didn't exist. You would now roughly, at somewhere at this point, you'd be approaching the bridge and be approaching the River Irk. That's the newer extension to Victoria Station, but this thing here on the side is the original Victoria Station, and you've walked over the river that is now culverted, and that is your view to the original Victoria Station in 1844. This drawing is looking up Hunt's Bank, Victoria Station approach, and you'll see in the distance there's no big fascia of Victoria Station. As I say, the station building is on the left hand side. Now bear with me because I am going somewhere with this. So remember I said about the School Mills on the previous map. Take a look at this picture entitled School Mills and Old Footbridge over the River Irk at Mill Brow 1877. There's the River Irk in the middle. Look to the left. Do you see the bridge? It looks similar to our footbridge in the Culvert. It's not identical, but it could have been altered or strengthened. Not quite sure. But those mills there, as far as I'm aware from this orientation, are facing the old Victoria Station that I've just shown you. Now, they're obviously called School Mills because of their proximity to Chetham's School, Chetham's College. That picture, when I first saw it, completely threw me, confused me, and it disorientated me. It took me a while to get my head around it, and I still might have it wrong, but this is what I think. If you look at the mill, this is where I think the mill is. Let me just flick back to modern day. Okay, so we're back on Todd Street. I think the mill was there, where you see the building with the funny dome and the white arrows appeared there. The bridge, the wooden bridge, is on Todd Street, which is in front of the station. Again, the station didn't exist in its current form, but I think that's where the mill is now. Like I say, if I'm wrong, I do apologise, but the orientation is very difficult to get your head round, and we're going back so far and the place has changed so much. So if you think I'm wrong, please correct me, but obviously correct me and tell me why you think I'm wrong. I'm not saying I am right, I'm saying I think I've got it right. What do you think?
So what was the point of me showing you those old maps in relation to that bridge under the culvert? Well, it was just to show that there's always been a crossing point there, or there seems to have always been a crossing point there. Since 1772, there's been a crossing point over the River Irk at that point. That final photograph, I think, was the one that sort of shut me up a little bit, because the bridge in the photograph and the bridge under the culvert look very, very similar. But I'm only offering all this up as supposition, and I'm wondering if, because there was always a crossing point there, it was referred to as the cattle bridge, because back in the 1700s they did used to take cattle across that point to graze on the fields either side, and if it was just called that. I can't prove anything, but do I think that bridge in the culvert is medieval? I don't know. It doesn't look it to me. The steel frame around it was possibly put there later, but when you look at the timbers, they don't look medieval to me at all. So I just want to put a question mark in there. If you know something for definite and you've got some information for me, by all means comment, but I think it might be an urban myth that that bridge is a cattle bridge from the 1600s. Certainly a crossing point there, certainly a bridge there from the 1800s that looks very similar to it, but I guess we'll never know. But that's part of the fun of doing what we do. We sort of throw these things up.
Okay, a little bit of late information has come to hand. I was chatting to our friend Geoffrey Ashworth, Jeff, who wrote the book The Lost Rivers of Manchester, and we were discussing the bridge, and he said it's very difficult to come up with information about the bridge. But he found an account that I'm going to just read a little bit. You can pause it and read the lot if you want, but I'm going to read a little bit to you. It's an account of Flemish weavers coming to Manchester, but they refer to a bridge. Let me just read you this. Now the account is very old because it talks about someone drowning in the river in 1596. As I say, you can read it all if you pause. But here's the bit I'm interested in. It says, there was also a stone bridge over the Irk at Mill Brow, but so narrow and steep that it could only be used by pack horses and foot passengers, yet it was probably the only outlet on that side for many generations. So, is that the cattle bridge? Originally a stone bridge, but later there were wooden versions of it that still got referred to as the cattle bridge. So it's, like I say, talking about a stone bridge at Mill Brow. I'll leave you with that one. Now, I don't know if you remember, just earlier on I said that Walkers Croft Cemetery and its proximity to the original Victoria Station would prove to be a problem. Well, I'm going to read you an excerpt which is really interesting but gruesome from Tom Ray's excellent book about Victoria Station. This is where I'm getting some of my information from. Here's the quote from the book. The cemetery had been opened in 1815, and even in November 1847 interments were still taking place. Passengers to and from Victoria Station were, we are told, subject to pestilential vapours coming from the graves, which contained 50 to 60 coffins, often covered with a few boards to await the next coffin, and then covered with a minimum of earth. So can you imagine that? You visited the station, nearby was Walkers Croft Cemetery, and the stench was coming from the cemetery because there was a few boards and a bit of soil down while they waited for the next load of coffins to go in. This was, I think this burial ground was for the poor, and it was sort of burials on an industrial scale, if you like. Okay, we're back in the culvert, and there's a bricked up archway there, and it has a counterpart across the culvert just the other side. Now, as we just get here, there's another feature that I can't explain, this archway. Not really sure what's going on here. We'll take a look, we'll walk in and take a look. There's a shaft there, as you can see, full of sand at its base. Now when we look up, we'll see some plastic pipes. Now those are obviously been put in at a later date, but what its original purpose was, I don't know. If we look across the river, there's another one across the other way. Now some of the urban explorers refer to these as morgue chutes. It's not as sinister as it sounds. Apparently dead cattle was thrown down here to be loaded onto boats, but I really don't know if that was the case. Is there any history of cattle being brought to the station and then loaded on the boats beneath Manchester Victoria Station? Not quite sure. It could be, but I really actually don't know. You'll notice in this shot that the paving on the riverbed, this was done in 1901, this riverbed paving. And it's cobbles most of the way through.
Amazing. Get a picture of it as well.
So I'm just going to draw your attention to these pieces of stone that look like pieces of stone that are sticking out up near the top of the culvert. I wonder if these were where they mounted the wooden frame that they used to build the arch of the roof. Just a theory, because they're not throughout the culvert, but then again, like I say, it was culverted in sections, so again, not quite sure, but another interesting feature.
So, daylight ahead, and when we get up there you'll see where we are in Manchester. We're at a kind of a weir. Let's go and take a look at the work that they're doing up here at the minute. So you can see just up there, they're taking the pontoon away. That sort of landing thing, that pontoon came right down here, and you could get on and walk that way. Now the river goes really deep. Again, the bloody rain that we've had the past few days. So it's too deep to scale this. We'll go and see what they're doing. But you can see the weir at the far end there.
So just to wrap up some of the information we were talking about earlier on, what became of the cemetery and what became of the workhouse. Well, the railway company bought the land that the cemetery was on and they basically built the station over it. So I think it's in where the trams go from now in Manchester Victoria Station, if you're familiar with the station. I think underneath where the trams go, that was Walkers Croft Cemetery. So the bodies will still be down there. The workhouse, the remainder of it was pulled down and the land was purchased in the 1920s to make way for goods yards for the railway. And you'll see up in the on the left-hand map there, on the old map, you'll see that it's just squozen into the corner there of Victoria Station. But nowadays, if you look on the right-hand map, it's just now the Manchester Evening News Arena. So basically, the workhouse was gone by the 1920s.
So there you go. Hope you enjoyed the River Irk culvert under Manchester Victoria. I've wanted to get in here for so long. I won't have to get on a boat now and come and sail up here. Incredible place, absolutely incredible, and a place that not many people get to see because, like I say, access is so difficult. Anyway, that's it. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Very sweaty down here, eating flies. Thanks for watching. See you very soon in the next video. Bye.